When I returned to Harrington just a few weeks ago, it felt strange. I was a 36-year-old freelance writer going back to my hometown. I figured researching local folklore would help my career. Harrington was small and quiet. Its old buildings and winding roads felt familiar. But I hadn't been back in years. I moved into my childhood home hoping it would feel like it used to. The first few days were normal. I walked through the town, soaking in the sights. The place hadn't changed much. I thought, I've never stopped thinking about Harrington. Then, my first night back, something odd grabbed my attention. I caught flickering lights from the old diner across the square. It had been closed for years. I wondered if I was just seeing things. I felt an unusual mix of curiosity and fear pulling me closer. As I approached the diner, everything changed. The flickering lights felt unsettling. They danced like a strobe light, calling out to me. Part of me wanted to turn back, but I pressed on. The diner was dark inside. I had to squint to see the old booths and dusty tables. I tripped over something on the floor. It was a stack of old newspapers, brittle and yellowed. I picked them up and read the headlines. They detailed strange reports. A phantom train that vanished long ago. Whispers in empty parks. Shadowy figures watching from the darkness. My heart raced. I didn't know if these stories were real or just local legends. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something true hidden in them. I started asking locals about the folklore, and their tales got under my skin. Each story layered over the last, intertwining and becoming murkier. After a few days, I walked through the empty park. I felt eyes on me, but nobody was there. Suddenly, I heard faint whispers. I stood frozen, trying to pinpoint their source. Then, someone called my name. I spun around, but there was nobody. Chills ran down my spine. I looked back toward the shadows. My breath caught in my throat. As the days crept forward, I encountered more whispers at night. The townsfolk talked about the old train tracks, saying they could hear the horn of the phantom train at midnight. I didn't believe it, but the more I heard, the more it felt real. One evening, I decided to return to the park. It was dark, the air thick with something unnameable. I listened closely. The whispers grew louder, almost screaming now. "Mark! Mark!" it echoed. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The shadows twisted, darkened, and I saw shapes writhing just out of sight. I couldn't breathe. Panic set in. I turned to leave, but something pulled me back. I knew I needed answers, but as I stood there, I wondered if I was ready to uncover what lay beneath Harrington's surface. What if it was something I couldn't escape? And that's when I realized. Harrington wasn't just a town. It felt like it was alive, hiding something darker. The next day, I couldn't shake off the feeling from the night before. I woke up early, determined to find someone who knew more about the town's folklore. After a quick breakfast, I headed to the local library. It was a small building, with shelves that creaked under the weight of dusty tomes. As I entered, the librarian, an older lady named Mrs. Crenshaw, looked up from her desk. She had a knowing gaze, as if she sensed the unease gripping me. I approached her and asked about the phantom train and the whispers in the park. She frowned, her expression tightening. "People don't like to talk about those things," she said softly. "It's better that way." I pressed on, undeterred. "Why? What happened?" She hesitated, glancing around as if the library might hear her. "It's the stories that keep the darkness alive. You shouldn't dig too deep, dear." I felt a chill creep up my spine, but I needed to know more. "Just tell me what you can, please." Mrs. Crenshaw seemed to weigh her options. Finally, she sighed. "There was a train crash years ago before you were born. They say the spirits of those who died are tied to the tracks. Sometimes they call to those who wander too close." Those words sank in, heavy and ominous. I had to wonder if the whispers were linked to this tragedy. It felt surreal, like the stories I had read were now coming to life. After our conversation, I dug through the library's archives. I found old newspaper articles about the crash. They detailed a foggy night when a train derailed, causing multiple fatalities. The last line of one article caught my eye. Locals swear they can still hear the train's horn echoing through the valley. I left the library feeling unsettled but more determined than ever to uncover the truth. That night I decided to visit the train tracks. The last train left Harrington before I was born, but I had to see the place. I arrived around midnight. The moonlight stretched shadows along the tracks and the air felt electric. As I stood there, an uneasy silence fell. I closed my eyes, straining to listen for anything. Just then I heard it, a distant horn, low and haunting. I snapped my eyes open, heart pounding. The sound became louder, closer. The hairs on my neck stood on end. It was like a wave crashing against the shore, relentless and terrifying. I turned, half expecting to see the train itself. But there was nothing. Only emptiness. The horn faded, leaving behind an eerie quiet. My mind raced. Everything I had been learning about Harrington seemed to point to this moment. I felt a pull back to the park, the source of those whispers. I didn't know what awaited me, but I knew I had to confront it. As I hurried back, though, a sense of dread gripped me. In the park, I stepped into the shadows where I had heard my name before. I called out, desperate to confront the unknown. "Who's there?" That's when I saw it. A shadowy figure emerging from the darkness. It was watching me, and I could feel its gaze searching my very soul. Then, everything went dark. When the darkness swallowed me, I felt a strange weight lifting off my shoulders, followed by an unnatural stillness. The world felt distorted, like a cracked mirror reflecting fragments of reality. I tried to blink away the veil that had fallen over my eyes, but nothing changed. I was trapped in a void. Suddenly I heard a voice, soft and whispery. "You shouldn't have come here." It was chilling, like ice threading through my veins. I could feel the presence growing closer, the shadow shifting but remaining formless. "Who are you?" I dared to ask, my voice trembling. All rational thought was gone. I was consumed by a desperate need for answers. "I am the echoes of those forgotten," the voice replied, almost melodic, yet haunting. "They cry for understanding, for closure." Before I could respond, flashes of light sparked around me, illuminating fleeting memories. I saw snippets of the train crash, chaotic screams, a bright light piercing through fog, and the desperate faces of those who had perished. My heart raced as the realization hit me hard. These weren't just stories, they were the cries of the souls left behind. The ground seemed to tremble beneath me, pulling me deeper into the vision. "It's your turn to listen," the voice pressed, its tone taking on an urgency. "Find the truth, or be consumed by deceit." I felt myself pulled back again, reclaiming some control. My surroundings shifted as the darkness peeled away, revealing a more familiar scene. A deserted park bench bathed in moonlight. I gasped, lungs filling with cool, crisp air. The figure was gone, but not without leaving a mark. I felt a shiver run down my spine as if it had touched me in more ways than one. That warmth of connection and comfort battled against the chill of fear. Had I just conversed with one of the spirits tied to this tragedy? I stood up, heart racing, processing what had just occurred. I had to know more. What was the truth they so desperately wanted me to find? I recalled the old newspaper articles. The faces of those who had died remained hidden behind their stories. There had to be more. I hurried back to Mrs. Crenshaw's library. If anyone could help me fill in the gaps, it was her. As I quickly walked, thoughts raced through my mind. What if the truth was more terrifying than I had imagined? I entered the library and the old woman greeted me, but her smile faded when she met my gaze. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, concern evident in her voice. "Something happened in the park," I stammered. "I need to know about the train crash. What really happened?" Mrs. Crenshaw's demeanor shifted. "The train story is a dark one. Many in this town wish to forget," she warned, urgency creeping into her tone. But I heard them. "The voices," I insisted, desperate for her to understand. "They need me to find the truth." She hesitated, glancing at the clock. "Very well," she murmured, as if deciding something monumental. But be careful. The past doesn't want to be disturbed. My heart raced as she led me into a back room filled with dusty shelves and stacks of old records. What she would reveal next could change everything, but I braced myself for the unknown. As she pulled out a thick folder, I caught a glimpse of a photograph, faces staring back at me, eyes filled with despair. One face looked eerily familiar. "Here it is," she said. "This will explain everything." Then she paused, looking over her shoulder. "But be prepared. It may not be what you expect." A knot twisted in my stomach as I found myself on the precipice of a hidden truth, one that felt tangled with my very being. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. I leaned forward as Mrs. Crenshaw opened the folder. Inside were pages yellowed by time, filled with articles and handwritten notes. The headline of the first article read, "Tragic train crash claims dozens." My stomach churned as I scanned the details. Names and ages flashed before me, each more haunting than the last. "Read this," she urged, pushing a page toward me. My eyes fell upon a name that suddenly twisted my insides tight. Jessica Holt. I knew that name. She was the girl I had seen in my dreams, the face that had haunted me. How was she connected to this? "She was a survivor," Mrs. Crenshaw said, noticing my shock. "But the damage she carried was immense. She was never the same." Her voice trembled, wrapped in the shadows of memory. She spoke of the night often, warning others about the train, but no one listened. "What do you mean? What happened?" I asked, urgency rushing to fill the silence. "There were rumors of something sinister," she said hesitantly. "Some believed it was an accident, others thought it was more deliberate. Jessica claimed to hear voices, much like you." A chill washed over me. Had I stepped into the same path she had walked? My pulse quickened. "What else did she say?" I pressed, gripping the table for support. "She spoke about the spirits of those who died," Mrs. Crenshaw continued. "She insisted they remained trapped, longing for recognition." Her gaze darkened. "Once she began to reveal their stories, she became a target. People stopped believing her." "Target? By who?" "The town. They wanted to forget." She shook her head, lost in thought. "Maybe even more than that. They didn't want the past to resurface." As I flipped through more articles, I found a newspaper clipping that detailed aggressive encounters with townsfolk who disagreed with Jessica's claims. Fear gripped me anew. What kind of community silences its own? "Did anyone ever find out what really happened?" I asked, insistent. "Rumors abound, but no one could piece it together." She looked at me with eyes filled with concern. "Be careful, dear. You've already crossed a line by seeking the truth." "I have to know," I blurted. The weight of the truth pressed on me like a vice. Then, a muffled thud echoed from the hallway. My heart jumped as I traded glances with Mrs. Crenshaw. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, panic seeping into my voice. "Yes," she replied, but uncertainty clouded her expression. "Stay here, I'll check." "No," I grabbed her arm. "Don't leave me alone." But it was too late. She pushed the door open and a gust of cold air swept through the room. My fear surged. What was waiting out there? I could almost hear the whispers begin to rise again, softer this time, but growing louder. Then everything went dark. The lights flickered and a sense of impending doom washed over me. Mrs. Crenshaw's figure vanished, swallowed by the shadows. "Mrs. Crenshaw!" I shouted, panic clawing at my throat. I stumbled towards the door, but a heavy presence stopped me. What if the past didn't want me to know this truth? What if uncovering the secrets led to something more dangerous than I could imagine? The whispers grew louder. "Find us," they urged, driving me forward, deeper into the unknown. I took a shaky breath and stepped out into the dark hallway. The air felt thick, and a chill wrapped around me. "Mrs. Crenshaw?" My voice was barely a whisper, swallowed by the silence of the old house. I strained to listen for any sign of her, but all I heard was the distant echo of my own heartbeat. The flickering overhead bulb cast eerie shadows against the walls. I hesitated, torn between staying put and searching for her. but the whispers pulsed through me, urging me onward. I could feel something pulling at the edges of my consciousness, and the need to find Mrs. Crenshaw overpowered my fear. I edged my way towards the next room. The door creaked open, revealing a dim space cluttered with old furniture draped in white sheets. It was almost like stepping into a ghost's home. I called out again, but my words fell flat. Then something caught my eye. Underneath one of the sheets was a box, its corners frayed with age. I made my way over, my hands trembling slightly. Lifting the sheet revealed a dusty wooden chest. I hesitated, fearing what I might find inside, but the whispers grew more insistent, almost desperate. I opened the chest, the lid groaning as it revealed stacks of photographs, most of which were black and white. I flipped through them, a mix of fear and fascination washing over me. They showed people from the past, all gathered at the train station, their faces filled with joy or curiosity. But then I found something that made me freeze. The same train, shrouded in fog, just like the one from my dreams. That's when I saw it. A girl stood in the background of one photo, partially obscured, but I recognized her immediately. It was Jessica Holt. My heart raced as I realized she was in the very spot where the train had crashed, her expression unreadable. I remembered Mrs. Crenshaw's words, how no one listened, how they tried to forget. Had Jessica known something? Did I hold the key to unraveling the mystery of that night? Suddenly I heard a noise, a faint shuffling. "Mrs. Crenshaw?" I called out, stepping back, panic gripping my chest. I felt exposed, like a target in this old house filled with echoes of the past. I turned toward the sound, but it was too late. A shadow loomed in the doorway and all the air in my lungs left me. I squinted, trying to make out the figure. For a moment, I thought it was Mrs. Crenshaw, but as the silhouette stepped into the light, the icy grip of dread settled over me. It wasn't her. "Find us," the voice rasped, crawling into my ears. It was low, and yet I felt it resonate in my bones. The room seemed to constrict around me as the girl in the photograph flashed in my mind. She needed me. I turned to flee back to safety, but the darkness shuddered behind me. I had stumbled onto something bigger than I had ever imagined. Now, not only was I searching for the truth, but I was also running from it. And whatever wanted to be found would not let me leave easily. I dashed out of the room, my breath hitching as I felt the cold air press against my back. I didn't look behind me. I just ran, my feet barely making a sound against the creaky wooden floor. The whispers were louder now, echoing in my mind, pulling me in every direction. I needed to get outside, I needed to escape. I'd barely made it back into the hallway when I heard it again. A soft shuffling followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps trailing behind me. Adrenaline surged through my veins, forcing me to pick up the pace. The front door felt like a sanctuary in the distance, but I knew I couldn't just burst through. I had to distract whatever was chasing me. I spotted another room on my right, its door slightly ajar. Without a second thought, I ducked inside, closing the door as quietly as I could. The room was dark, but I could make out the shape of a bed and shelves filled with dusty books. I pressed my back against the door, my heart hammering. I strained to listen. I could hear the footsteps now pacing just outside the room. "Find us," the voice returned, sounding so close it made my skin crawl. Suddenly I noticed something glinting on the bedside table. I stepped forward carefully, not wanting to make any noise. It was a small, tarnished key, lying atop a pile of old letters. Curiosity wrestled with fear as I picked it up, its cool metal pressing into my palm. Where could it fit? My mind immediately jumped back to the chest in the other room. Could it be another secret waiting to be uncovered? More footsteps echoed in the hallway, closer this time. I could feel a wave of panic wash over me. I needed to act quickly. I turned and fled back into the hallway, the key still clutched in my hand. The whispers in my ears morphed into frantic cries, urging me to hurry. The front door seemed so far away, but I couldn't stop now. I raced back to the room with the chest, every step fueling my determination. As I threw open the door, I was met with a gust of stale air that smelled of dust and decay. The chest sat waiting, so innocuous yet foreboding. I hurried to it, fumbling with the lock. My hands shook as I inserted the key. A click echoed like a gunshot in the silence. I lifted the lid quickly, heart pounding, and gasped. Inside, the photograph spilled out. But there was more. Old train tickets, more letters, and this sent a chill through me. A newspaper clipping with Jessica's picture on it, dated the day after the crash. Her smile seemed taunting, almost alive. I knew now that what I was searching for was so much darker than I had realized. I wasn't just looking for the truth. I was opening a door that led to something haunting. Outside, the sound of heavy footsteps grew louder, almost demanding. I felt the walls shaking around me. I needed to know what happened. But there was no turning back now. I looked at the newspaper article again, and then to the flickering light above me. Then it all went dark. I was no longer safe. Whatever was here had come for me, and I didn't know how to fight it. I startled awake, my heart racing. The darkness pressed in on me, thick and suffocating. I was still in the room with the chest, but everything felt different. Harsher, more threatening. The flickering light above me was gone. I strained to hear, but silence wrapped around me like a shroud. Panic seeped into my bones. Had I imagined the footsteps chasing me? Was this place just a figment of my fear? I rubbed my eyes, trying to shake off the remnants of sleep. But when I opened them again, the room seemed to pulse, breathing around me. I swallowed hard, the taste of dust lingering on my tongue. I searched for my phone, but it was nowhere in sight. I scrambled to my feet, the wood creaking beneath my weight. Fumbling, I grabbed the newspaper clipping from the chest. My fingers traced Jessica's face, the warmth of life frozen in time. I had to find answers. I needed to know what happened to her. I stepped toward the door and hesitated. What if whatever had hunted me in the darkness still lingered nearby? I leaned against the wall, my breath shallow as I listened again. Nothing but silence. Taking a deep breath, I turned the knob slowly and peeked outside. The hallway lay in shadows, but I could make out the faint outlines of the other rooms. The oppressive feeling still hung in the air, but I felt drawn to it, pulled by some inexplicable force. Maybe the truth was waiting for me just beyond that threshold. I stepped out, crouching low, the key clutched in my hand like a talisman. The house creaked and settled as I moved cautiously down the hallway. I had to find answers, but with each step the whispers returned, insidious and intent. Find us. A cold gust rushed through the corridor and I shivered. I remembered the letters in the chest. They felt significant, like clues. I had to get back to them. I turned toward the room when I heard it, a soft thud, like a body hitting the ground. My heart lurched and I froze. Peering into the dark, I saw something move. A flash of white drifted past the door at the end of the hall. I wasn't alone. My instincts told me to run, but that nagging curiosity pulled at me again. What if that was another sign? I moved closer, willing myself not to scream. As I approached the door, my breath caught in my throat. There, in the small crack, I caught a glimpse of someone sitting on the floor, their back turned to me. The figure was still, unnaturally so. I could barely see them, but something about the way they sat sent chills down my spine. "Jessica?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The figure turned slightly, and in that moment I felt a wave of dread wash over me. That's when I saw it, a faint glimmer of something sharp in their hand. Whatever this was, it seemed to be waiting for me. I needed to decide, did I confront this figure, or did I retreat? But both options filled me with terrible fear. I took a step back, heart racing. I had to make a choice. My instinct screamed for me to run, but curiosity clawed at my heels. This figure, was it really Jessica, or was it something else, something darker? I needed to know, but the glint of metal told me to tread carefully. I glanced back at the chest behind me, feeling the weight of the letters I'd left behind. They were all that linked me to the truth. Somewhere in those pages, I hoped, lay the answers I craved. But the figure in front of me wouldn't let me turn my back again. I took a breath and stepped forward, whispering, "Please, it's me, I want to help you." My voice felt small in the overwhelming silence. The figure didn't move, but that glimmering object remained poised as if it could strike at any moment. With another cautious step, I squinted, trying to make out details. The pale fabric seemed tattered, just like the notes in the chest. I had to see their face. Jessica. I pressed again, louder this time. The figure finally turned all the way towards me. My breath caught. It wasn't her, not fully. The face was eerily familiar, as if it were a distorted reflection of the photograph. Eyes wide and hollow, they seemed to swallow all the light. I could feel the coldness radiating from her, a depth of despair and rage. Why did you leave? Her voice was a raspy whisper, twisting like a breeze that carried secrets. They're still searching for you. For us. Who? What do you mean? I stammered, every instinct telling me to flee, yet my feet felt glued to the floor. She raised the sharp object, and I flinched. In that vulnerable moment, everything inside me screamed danger, but her voice was an anchor. You don't understand, you have to listen before it's too late. Then the house groaned, a sudden creaking sound echoing through the hallway, stronger and more menacing than before. It felt as if the very walls were alive, shifting under some unseen weight. The figure's expression shifted. Fear mingled with urgency. They're coming. You have to hide. A noise exploded from the other end of the hallway, a sharp crack followed by thunderous footsteps. My pulse quickened as I fought against the wave of panic rising in my throat. I glanced back at the door, my exit from this nightmare, but it suddenly felt miles away. No, don't turn your back on them, she screamed, eyes wild. Trust me, you have to do exactly as I say. The footsteps grew louder, shattering my resolve. I was cornered, the figure's voice and the threat behind me swirling into chaos. In my gut, I knew. Whatever was coming was far more dangerous than anything I'd encountered so far. Do you want to live? She asked, urgency dripping from her words. I nodded, despite the fear gripping me. Then follow me. Everything inside me screamed to run, but instead, I stepped toward her, towards a shadowy door that looked like a passage into uncertainty. I hesitated for a moment, catching sight of the tension on her face. The footsteps thundered closer now, a relentless reminder that my time was running out. Pushing through the fear, I reached for the door she had indicated. It felt cold beneath my fingertips, a solid barrier between me and whatever was pursuing us. Now, she insisted, her voice barely concealing the panic. I opened the door and stumbled into darkness. It was a narrow space, barely lit. The musty air clung to my skin like a wet blanket, but I stepped inside, driven by the desperation to escape. Close it, she hissed, and I obeyed, shutting the door just as a loud thud reverberated outside. I could barely see her, but I sensed her fear shift into determination. We'll have to be quick. This way. I followed her through the dark corridor, the faint sound of our footsteps echoing off the walls. Each passing moment felt heavier than the last, like the air itself was stifling my breath. The dim light ahead flickered, revealing an old, rusted staircase. We need to get to the basement, she whispered urgently. Trust me. Why? I asked, panic rising in my throat. What's down there? Answers, she replied, her voice steadying slightly. But we're running out of time. We scampered down the stairs, the steps creaking ominously under our weight. I felt the chill of dread wrap around me. Each footfall brought the vibrations of the house to life, as if we were running deeper into its memories. I could hear whispers now, low and haunting, brushing against my ears like an echo of the past. When we reached the bottom, she stopped abruptly and turned. This way. She pointed to a small door at the far end of the basement. It's safe in there. I blinked against the dim light, trying to make sense of my surroundings. Dusty boxes lined the shelves, and the faint smell of mildew made me gag. I wanted to ask her more questions, but those footsteps continued to loom in my mind. Is anyone else down here? I asked nervously, glancing back toward the stairs. No, just us, she insisted, as if she could hear my thoughts. I promise. There's something you need to see. I felt the weight of her gaze imploring me to trust her. With a deep breath, I approached the small door, its edges cracked and peeling. Something deep in my gut told me it wasn't just darkness behind it. It was a threshold to something greater, a truth I had been avoiding. But as I reached for the handle, an angry bang echoed from the stairs. The sense of urgency intensified, and I threw the door open wide. Inside, darkness enveloped me completely, swallowing my thoughts about what might be lurking in the shadows behind me. Just as I hesitated, the door creaked open further, revealing a narrow room with walls lined with photographs. I stepped inside, my heart racing. That's when I saw it. A prominent picture was framed on the wall, and my breath hitched in my throat. It was her. This distorted version of Jessica. But it was also me. My face mirrored back at me in the most twisted way. Just as my realization sank in, the door slammed shut behind me, plunging us into an even thicker darkness. Fear clamped down on my chest as I reached back for the door, but it wouldn't budge. The room had turned cold, and I realized I was trapped. With frantic strides, I turned to face the photographs that hung around me. They all told a story, but the central one was different, familiar yet alien. I was staring not just at Jessica's face, but at the disfigured remnants of my own, eyes hollow like an echo. Why? I gasped, feeling dread clawing at my throat. My heart raced. What did this mean? Did I somehow belong here, or was I merely a pawn caught in a twisted game? Beside me, the figure that bore the semblance of Jessica stepped closer, her features softening, revealing an echo of connection between us. They are searching for the truth, for the ones who vanished, she murmured, her voice an intricate weave of despair and urgency. Who? I pressed, glancing nervously towards the door. The footsteps had grown distant but not gone. You have to tell me. What's happening? She stepped forward, eyes locked on mine, searching for something in my expression. You want the truth, don't you? You're connected to this just like I was. You have to find what they left behind. What do you mean? My voice wavered, part curiosity and part terror. The weight of her words pressed down, and I could feel the darkness surrounding me close in. Then, a flickering light ignited in a corner, illuminating a small, half-hidden shelf stacked high with journals and papers, their spines dusty and worn. The truth is in those pages, she urged. It will reveal what the town has buried, more than the crash, more than the whispers. It's all intertwined with you. I took a hesitant step toward the shelf, somehow compelled to inch closer. Each page of those journals beckoned to me, a treasure map leading directly into the heart of Harrington's darkness. Just then, I felt a shiver race through the room, as if the shadows were alive, pressing against me. Do not linger, they'll come for you. The figure gasped, her voice sharp with urgency. I turned back to her. What do I do? Open them. Suddenly, a heavy pounding filled the air, fierce and relentless. Shadows began to creep around the edges of the room, dark tendrils reaching out, clawing at the light. Adrenaline surged in my veins like fire, and I lunged at the shelf, scrambling to pull a journal free. As I flipped through the pages, the scrawled handwriting swam before my eyes. Stories of pain, loss, and eerie warnings cascaded beneath my palms. I read of families torn apart by tragedy, of spirits that lingered long after they should have moved on. Names constantly repeated, each tied to the very crash that had sent Harrington's heart into a reverberating silence. And then I saw my name mentioned, intertwined with their stories in a way that sent icy fingers down my spine. Find us, whispered the figure, her tone almost pleading as the shadows thickened around me. You need to find the truth, those who need to be remembered. But just as I was piecing together the truths, something monstrous roared from the other side of the door. The footsteps had returned with a vengeance. I felt the void around me grow, a ravenous beast longing for all that was left unspoken. Please, I need to know, I cried out. And just as I uttered those words, the door rattled violently, slamming against the walls. With desperation boiling inside, I buried my face in the journal, absorbing each letter until they felt part of me. Memories swept through the pages, ghostly whispers rushing past, revealing memories too sacred to remain buried. Images of that fateful night flashed vividly in my mind. The train, the fog, the terror etched on faces that were once vibrant and full of life. Names flickered and sparkled like stars before fading into dark oblivion. "Enough!" I yelled, feeling a sense of defiance surge within me against the darkness suffocating me. "I will not let you take this." The walls pulsed as if responding to my outcry, and the shadows began to retreat slightly. The figure of Jessica stepped closer, her expression fierce. "You have the keys. Show them we remember. Bring their voices back." With renewed courage, I flipped to the last pages of the journal where the final notes lay. They spoke of a reckoning, a moment in time that could either break or mend the bonds of the past. It felt like a call to action, and inhaling deeply, I summoned every ounce of courage I had left. "I will remember you," I declared, my voice steady even as chaos whirled around me. "I'll tell your stories. You won't be forgotten." With a sudden blast, the door flung open, thrusting me back into the hallway. Dim light fell around me as I stumbled forward, feeling like I had crossed into another realm. The figure wavered, reaching out, but she was fading, absorbed by the shadows that threatened to swallow everything. "No!" I shouted, my heart breaking, but as I looked back, a sense of purpose washed over me. In my hand I clutched the journal as the whispers crescendoed, enveloping me in an embrace. I took off toward the exit, the house groaning under the weight of the spirits now awakened. A confrontation had begun, but I wasn't afraid. I had their truths, and with them I would break the silence that haunted Harrington. As I burst out into the night, chaos spilling behind me, I knew the truth would always linger. The dark wasn't vanquished, it simply waited. But perhaps now, even in uncertainty, I carried a flicker of light that could bridge the divide between the past and the present, bringing forth the voices long silenced. Weeks passed, and I walked the streets of Harrington again. The stories I'd uncovered became a publication, a testament to those spirited lives, and the truths they shared. More than building a career, I felt I had built a connection. And though questions lingered, whispering in the corners of my mind, what truly happened that night? What would the shadows do now? I forged ahead with hope. As for Harrington, life continued, but it felt different. Walking through that town, I often looked back at the library, the home, the park, wondering if I'd tapped into something eternal. Our stories demanded a voice, and I learned that while some questions may never find answers, bearing witness to echoes of the past could lead to healing, both for us and for those we lost. Sometimes it was simply enough to remember.